Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share something a little different, something very personal. It's a story about a time when everything felt like it was falling apart, but also a story about incredible hope and provision. I want to take you back to 2020, a year that I'm sure we all remember for so many reasons. For me, 2020 started with a lot of uncertainty. I was living in New York City, a place I had dreamed of being, a city buzzing with energy and opportunity. As an immigrant, making it here felt like I had finally arrived. I had a job I enjoyed, I was building a life, and I was filled with so much excitement for the future. But then, the world changed. The pandemic hit, and New York, the city that never sleeps, suddenly went quiet. The streets were empty, the sirens were constant, and a heavy cloud of fear seemed to hang over everything. Like millions of others around the world, I found myself in a position I never expected. I lost my job. The company I worked for had to make drastic cuts, and my role was eliminated. I remember the email, the phone call. It all felt so surreal. At 1 minute, I had a routine, a purpose, a paycheck. The next, I had nothing but four walls of my tiny apartment and a whole lot of questions. Panic started to set in. How was I going to pay my rent? New York is expensive, and my savings wouldn't last forever. How was I going to buy groceries? What was I going to do? The feeling of isolation was overwhelming. I'm an immigrant, which means my family, my core support system, is thousands of miles away. I couldn't just go home for a comforting hug or a home-cooked meal. I was truly on my own in a city that was now a ghost town. My friends were also struggling, locked in their own apartments, dealing with their own fears. The sense of being completely and utterly alone was crushing. I remember looking out my window at the empty streets and just feeling this profound sense of despair. I felt like a tiny boat lost in a massive, stormy ocean with no land in sight. In those first few weeks, I spent a lot of time just existing. I was scared, I was anxious, and honestly, I was angry. I questioned everything. Why was this happening? Had I made a mistake coming here? Was this a sign that I should just give up and go back? My faith, which had always been a source of strength for me, felt distant. I prayed, but my prayers felt like they were just hitting the ceiling and falling back down. I'd read my Bible, but the words felt hollow. It was a dark, difficult time. It felt like I was in a tunnel and I couldn't see any light at all. But in the middle of that darkness, something began to shift. It wasn't a big, dramatic moment. It was small, quiet. I was at my absolute lowest, feeling completely helpless, and I remember just crying out to God. Not a formal prayer, just a raw, honest cry from my heart. God, I don't know what to do. I have nothing. I am alone. If you are real, if you are there, I need you now. Please show me what to do. It was a prayer of complete surrender. I had tried to figure things out on my own to control the situation, and I had failed. I had nothing left to rely on but Him, and that S when I started to see God's faithfulness in ways I could never have imagined. It didn't happen overnight. I didn't suddenly get a new job offer or a lottery win. Instead, God started providing for me day by day, moment by moment. It started with a text from a friend I hadn't spoken to in a while. They just said, "Hey, thinking of you. I was at the grocery store and got some extra stuff. Can I drop a bag off outside your door?" I was stunned. I hadn't told them how much I was struggling. It was a small gesture, but to me, it was a lifeline. It was a bag of groceries, yes, but it was also a message. You are not forgotten. Then more things started to happen. A former colleague reached out of the blue and asked if I'd be interested in a small, remote freelance project. It wasn't a full-time job, but it was enough to cover my rent for the next month. I remember just staring at the email, tears streaming down my face. A week before, I had no idea how I was going to pay my rent, and now here was the exact amount I needed. It felt like a direct answer to a desperate prayer. It wasn't a coincidence. It was provision. One of the most amazing things was how my church community rallied. Even though we couldn't meet in person, people checked in on me. Someone sent me an unexpected gift card for food delivery. Another person called just to pray with me over the phone. These weren't grand gestures, but they were tangible expressions of love and care, orchestrated by God to remind me that even without my family nearby, I had a family in Christ. I wasn't alone. He was using His people to be His hands and feet. Through this period, I learned what it truly means to trust God for my daily bread. There were days I'd wake up with anxiety creeping back in, wondering what would happen when the freelance money ran out. And on those days, I'd force myself to open my Bible, and the verses about God's provision would jump out at me. Verses like Matthew 6, where Jesus says, "Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they?" I started to see that verse not just as a nice platitude, but as a direct promise for my life. God provides for the birds, and He was providing for me, an immigrant in New York, with no job and no family nearby. This experience taught me that God's faithfulness isn't about preventing us from going through storms. It's about being with us in the storm. He is the anchor that holds us steady when the waves are crashing all around. He didn't magically take away the pandemic or instantly give me a six-figure job. Instead, He walked with me through the valley. He provided just enough, just in time. He showed me that my security doesn't come from a job, a bank account, or my own abilities. My true security comes from Him alone. Looking back now, I can see 2020 not as the year I lost everything, but as the year I gained a deeper, more authentic faith. It was the year I learned to depend on God in a way I never had before. It stripped away all my self-reliance and forced me to rely completely on His grace, and He proved Himself to be more than faithful. He provided for my physical needs, my financial needs, and most importantly, my emotional and spiritual needs. He met me in my loneliness and filled it with His presence. Today, my life looks very different. I eventually found a new, wonderful job. The city has come back to life, but I carry the lessons of that time with me every single day. I have a new perspective on what it means to be provided for. It's not about having an abundance of everything. It's about having exactly what you need when you need it, and knowing who the provider is. If you're watching this and you're in a season of uncertainty, if you feel alone, scared, or like you've lost everything, I want to encourage you, cry out to God. Be honest with Him about your fears and your needs, and then watch. Watch for His provision. It might not look the way you expect. It might be a bag of groceries, an unexpected phone call, or a small freelance project. But He will show up. He is faithful. He was faithful to me, a lonely immigrant in the middle of a global crisis, and He will be faithful to you right where you are. Thank you so much for letting me share my heart with you today. This story is a testament to God's goodness, and I pray it encourages you. If you have a story of God's faithfulness in your own life, I would love to read it in the comments below. Let's encourage one another. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, and subscribe for more content. Until next time, take care and God bless. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share something deeply personal, a story about faith, struggle, and incredible provision during one of the most challenging times in recent history. I hope that by sharing my journey, it might bring a little bit of hope and encouragement to you wherever you are in life. Let's rewind to early 2020. I was living in New York City, a place I had dreamed of calling home. As an immigrant, just building a life here felt like a massive achievement. I had a job I was proud of, a routine I loved, and a sense of stability I had worked so hard for. Life felt like it was finally falling into place. But then, as we all know, the world changed. The pandemic hit New York like a tidal wave. The city that never sleeps fell silent. Sirens became the new soundtrack of our lives, and an invisible fear hung in the air. Businesses started closing one by one. And then I got the email. The one I had been dreading. My company was downsizing, and my position was being eliminated. Just like that, I was jobless. In the epicenter of a global health crisis. As an immigrant, my entire right to be here was tied to my employment. Losing my job wasn't just about losing an income. It felt like I was losing my footing, my security, my very place in this country. The weight of it all was crushing. I had no family here, no safety net to fall back on. I was completely on my own, and the future, which had seemed so bright just weeks before, was now a terrifying blank slate. I remember sitting in my tiny apartment, the silence deafening, and just breaking down. The questions flooded my mind. How will I pay my rent? Where will I get money for food? What happens if my visa expires? It felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff with the ground crumbling beneath my feet. In that moment of utter desperation, all I could do was pray. It wasn't a fancy, eloquent prayer. It was a raw, honest cry for help. God, I don't know what to do. I have nothing left. Please, show me you're here. Please, provide. That prayer marked a turning point. It wasn't that a job offer magically appeared the next day. It was far more subtle and far more profound. It was a shift in my perspective from focusing on the storm around me to looking for the hand of God within it. I decided to trust, even when it made no logical sense. And then the miracles started to happen. Not in a big, flashy way, but in small, consistent acts of provision that could only have come from God. It started with a stimulus check. For many, it was a small relief, but for me, it was a lifeline. It covered my rent for a month, giving me a crucial bit of breathing room. It felt like God was saying, "I've got this. Just take the next step." Soon after, a friend from my church, someone I hadn't spoken to in weeks, reached out completely out of the blue. She asked how I was doing, and I was honest about my situation. A few hours later, I got a notification on my phone. She had sent me money for groceries. No questions asked, just a simple act of generosity. I sat there looking at my phone, tears streaming down my face. It wasn't just about the money. It was the timing. It was the confirmation that God heard my prayers and was moving in the hearts of others to care for me. This started a pattern. Another person from a small group I was part of sent me an unexpected gift card for a food delivery service. My landlord, hearing about the widespread job losses, voluntarily offered a temporary rent reduction without me even having to ask. It was one thing after another. A former colleague recommended me for a freelance project that paid enough to cover my bills for 2 more months. It was a short-term gig, but it came at the exact moment I needed it. Each instance was a whisper from God, saying, "I am faithful. I will not leave you. I am your provider." I learned to live day by day, trusting that what I needed for that day would be there. And it always was. My pantry was never empty. My rent was always paid. It defied all logic. In a city shut down, with millions unemployed, I, an immigrant with no job and no family, was being sustained. This period taught me the true meaning of faith. It's not about having all the answers or a clear path forward. It's about trusting in the character of God, even when your circumstances scream the opposite. It's about believing that He is a good Father who cares about the smallest details of our lives. He knew I needed rent money. He knew I needed food, and He provided in the most personal and timely ways. Looking back, losing my job was one of the scariest things that has ever happened to me. But it also became one of the greatest blessings. It stripped away my self-reliance and my false sense of security and forced me to depend on God in a way I never had before. It showed me his faithfulness in a tangible, undeniable way. He wasn't just a concept I believed in. He became my daily bread, my provider, my peace in the storm. My story isn't about me being special. It's about God being faithful, and His faithfulness is available to every single one of us. Maybe you're in a situation right now that feels impossible. Maybe you've lost a job, are facing financial hardship, or are just feeling lost and alone. I want to encourage you to turn to Him, to cry out to Him with your honest fears and needs. He sees you. He knows exactly what you're going through, and His promises are true. He promises to be our provider, our strength, and our refuge. My experience in 2020 is a testament to that. He carried me through the darkest valley, and He can and will do the same for you. Don't lose hope. Keep trusting. Keep looking for His hand in the small things, because that's often where His greatest miracles are found. Thank you so much for letting me share my heart with you today. If this story resonated with you, I would love to hear about it in the comments. Let's encourage one another with stories of God's faithfulness in our own lives. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. It really helps support the channel and allows me to keep sharing these messages of hope. Until next time, take care and God bless.